Hi guys, thanks so much for watching. Speaking of, I'm Stephanie, and today we're talking with Briana Nicastro, community activist. She is so involved in every type of community service you can imagine. She has contacts and connections to every good doing that you can possibly imagine. So speaking of community involvement, Briana, tell us about the organizations that you are involved with.
Sure. So currently, the two organizations that I'm most involved with are Big Brothers, Big Sisters of the Lowcountry, which is a local chapter of the Big Brothers, Big Sisters organization, as well as Dorchester Paws, which is our community animal shelter. I am the Vice President, Board of Directors for Dorchester Paws. I had just started off as a volunteer, but just really wanted to do more. Once you get there and you're working with these animals and seeing how much the shelter needs, it really just became addicting to do more and help more, just because you're seeing these animals and you just want the best for them. And Big Brothers Big Sisters is a really great organization here in the Low Country. Originally, I actually heard about them when I was living in Boston. One of my coworkers had a little, and he had had a relationship with the little for 10 years at that point. The little was in his wedding, just super involved, which was really, really neat. And I became interested, so I reached out and inquired, but at the time, you needed to be able to commit to a year. And I didn't know that I would be living in Boston for a full year, just given my husband's career and things going on. So as soon as we put down our roots in Charleston, that was one of the first organizations that I reached out to.
Where did your love of helping others, and I said earlier, all things mammals, because you help animals and people, where did that love start?
It's hard to pinpoint. As a kid, I was just always sensitive and, had a big heart and wanted to help people. My mom's the same way. I never really did community service as a child. Did a little bit in college, but not religiously to one organization or anything. And then I think what really started was when we adopted our second dog. He had just come from a terrible situation, and I would just look at him and think how amazing and perfect he is and how he completed our family. And that's really what kind of spurred us to do more with animals. And then with Big Brothers Big Sisters, I just wanted to do more. Actually, I was in a program in high school called the Key Club, and it was a club to help with volunteer times. And a lot of it that I found that interests me, because there would be basically a bulletin board of different opportunities you could do, was working with children. And so I would go to the lower income schools and be assigned to a reading buddy. And that's what really kind of spurred my interest in wanting to work with a kid. It was really, really awesome and rewarding.
How long have you had the little that you have now?
The little that I have now, it's been a year. We actually just passed our year mark, which has been awesome. And just getting to know her has been really cool. The first few months, she was so shy. I couldn't tell if she enjoyed her time with me or not. It took a while for her to come out of her shell and kind of trust me. And then when she did, it was just a whole different type of relationship and vibe. And now she'll randomly text me or FaceTime me or whatever. And we'll get together and do crafts and things like that. Obviously, it's a little different now being in the middle of a quarantine, so it's a lot more texting and FaceTiming and things like that. But hopefully we'll get back to normal and be able to see each other in person soon. The first time we met, I met her parents and her younger brother and her older sister. Her older sister is also in the program. And it was just crazy how many parallels we had. Her little brother is Derek, and that's my brother. Her dad is a mechanic, and so is my dad. They're a very musical family. And I grew up playing percussion, and there was just a lot of parallels that just seemed to make it right. So I was perfectly comfortable with the match.
Is there a particular moment that sticks out to you that you felt like you really made an impact in her life?
Honestly, it hasn't been with her. It was more so with her mom. I didn't know if she was enjoying her time with me. So I just straight up asked her mom, and her mom was like, no, she like comes home and she's a chatty Cathy and talks about everything that you guys did. And that's what made me realize like she's just shy and she just needs more time. Um, and so a lot of our time wasn't spent talking, you know, it would be doing fun activities and things like that. And I let her kind of come around at her own pace.
How is it working with families? Because I feel like that could be kind of an intimidating thing because you don't know, you're going into their family.
Yeah. And what's cool about the program too is there are so many families that want to be a part of it, but on the flip side there's not enough bigs, so they feel super appreciative once they do find a match. And her family is super involved, you know, they really want to make this work. She just got a cell phone, but before that her mom would give her cell phone and let her FaceTime me and things like that. And I would text her mom and just check in. So to make it successful, it really is having, you know, the family willing to do things. Her mom is always willing to meet me halfway because we live in completely different parts of Charleston. I've met her grandparents. I've gone into her grandma's house and they're always wanting to feed me and things like that. So that really is what has made it successful. And I think having her sister in the program, they know what it takes, and they really just wanted a strong female figure for her because both of her parents work a lot, and just her personality being kind of reserved, they wanted her to have someone else that she could talk to.
With Dorchester Paws, then switching to animals.
Yes.
How did you end up getting involved with them?
It's kind of a crazy story. So a little bit of background. My husband played professional hockey, and then he retired at the end of 2017. Hockey has always been his only job. So after that, I was like, well, what do you like to do? And he's like, literally all I like is hockey and dogs. Like, I'm not going to sit at a desk. I'm not going to do the 9 to 5. So I was like, cool, that's great. Why don't you do something tying them together? And he had, with one of our dogs, Violet, put on his rollerblades and would exercise her. And, you know, she's running and he's rollerblading. It's like, why don't you do that in the community? So that's really where Skatedogtor was born. And that was his full-time job. And then aside from that, we wanted to do more. So he had done a lot of research and he was thinking, well, like, this is great. I love working with, you know, my clients, but what if I got dogs out of the shelter, and just, you know, film them and see how they act. And so the last team that he played for was the South Carolina Stingrays, and there was a supporter, a season ticket holder, and we found out he was the board president of Dorchester Paws. So we met with him and got in touch. And then after that, it was like every weekend we were at Dorchester Paws, and I would go and we would drive their big van. We would throw 5 dog cages in there and bring 5 dogs at a time. And it was like, we would have 2 volunteers with us. So we would get the other dogs out while one's skating. We would just walk the other ones to get them fresh air because they're cooped up in a kennel all day. And it just became like so good for the soul and so addicting that we ended up doing it for 5 different local shelters, and it kind of blew up from there. And he makes customized videos of each skate with each dog that the shelters can use and promote on social media, and he promotes it. And so that's kind of where Skatedogtor was born, but that's where my like true passion for shelter dogs came from as well.
What do you see in their personality? How does that change whenever they get to be in that environment and free and having fun?
Yeah. It's their true personalities. And it's funny because not all of them want to skate. You know, some of them, he'll put the harness on and they won't leave my side because they just want to sit in my lap and cuddle. But when you go to the shelter, you walk into the yard and there's kennels on each side. So all the dogs are just facing each other and it's outside. So you just hear them bark. Mm-hmm. And so people are walking down the middle and they're like, oh, that dog barks. We can't have a dog that barks, heaven forbid, you know, and you get them out of the kennels, and that was clearly just their defense mechanism. And you just see their true personality. Even we have a few play yards at the shelter, and we'll take them in there. And as soon as you take their leash off, they're just running in circles or jumping in your lap. And so it's the same with skating, and he gets to capture all of that footage, which is really cool. You know, he will put the camera from the front, and so you can see them just smiling. And it really has helped with the adoption videos or the adoption numbers. You know, people will see it and say, wow, that dog's awesome. Like, he's super playful, or that would be a good running buddy. And you may not see that in the shelter, which has been cool.
What would you tell people after you saw both sides and you knew how it worked, you know, as a volunteer, but then also as part of the board? What would you tell people who aren't living in that world? What surprised you, or what they may not know? What's unexpected about that?
Just so much that goes into any nonprofit. Like I said, the finances are a huge thing, and every dollar matters. So where do you want to spend the money? You want to spend the money on the animals. So that means some months, you know, we can't focus on marketing efforts, which means less donations are coming in. And just seeing that whole side of things, what I really enjoy most about it is the development side of things. So helping with fundraisers and collecting items for donations for our events, and putting on events and planning and getting people to donate their time, getting people to donate music or food or things like that. I really like that because I like meeting people in the community, and I just encourage those who are interested just to ask. You know, like I said, I never expected I would be a good fit for a board. You know, I thought it was people that had been in business for a long time, but the best part of a board is having all different people from all different backgrounds working together. You know, like we have someone that's a lawyer, so he helps with any contracting and things like that. I'm in insurance, so I can help with getting insurance for the shelter, and there's just all these different people, and it makes the world go round. It's really cool. We didn't have as many donations coming in, so we had to take away some of the staff hours and things like that. And so we made a big push for fostering because, you know, people are working from home, so they have the time. And it was crazy. Like, the community came together. The first probably 3 days, we got all the dogs out. They were all in foster, which like never happens. Our development director did an amazing job. She was reaching out to all the people that had fosters, and she was doing Facebook Live videos of the dogs in their foster home, so you could see them, same idea, outside of the kennels. And so our adoption numbers were actually through the roof. And I think it's because, you know, people were realizing they were going to be home for at least a couple weeks, so they could take the time to train the dogs and give the dogs time to adapt to their lifestyle. So that was super heartwarming. You know, we didn't have as many funds coming in, but the amount of animals going out was really, really awesome.
How many animals do you end up with after you see all these and you play with them and you meet them?
So you definitely get attached. You have your favorites, and it's when those favorites get adopted, it's like you're sad but happy. You know, like you're sad you won't see them. A lot of times I'm adding their adopted families on Facebook or something, or following them on Instagram so I can keep in touch and get updates. But then you're just overly happy that that dog is out of the kennel, because it can be just a horrible environment for them, and some of them just deteriorate. Before, we were living in an apartment. We had our 2 dogs, and that was the limit. And then we actually just bought a house, moved in March, and we already have 4. So that's kind of our limit. We went from 2 to 4 really quickly.
I also saw you had a birthday party for the dog that you mentioned previously, Violet.
Yes. So
that looked bigger than a first birthday party that people have for their kids.
It feels like we've really just grown up together. You know, like, just, I think back on when I first got her, I was living in a city, living like the city life where I worked 12 hours a day, and just how hard it was. And my parents told me, you don't realize how difficult a puppy is. But we just like kind of trucked through it. And ever since, I've always thrown big birthdays for her.
Who did you invite? Did other dogs come, or was it just your own dogs?
Yeah, there was other dogs. It's on the way to Folly Beach, but I guess it's James Island, called the Barrel. And it's a bar, but it's a huge yard fenced in with water so dogs can swim. And they have live music and food trucks. So normally we'll go there We've been to a bunch of dog birthday parties there too, so we're not the only crazy ones.
And so going back to the shelter, you guys are fundraising to build a new shelter. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so our shelter right now is our original shelter from the early 70s. So it's just falling apart. If you go to the website, there's pictures. All the cinder blocks are cracking. The kennels are old and we're constantly replacing them. But one of the biggest issues is any time that it rains, the kennels flood and they're part outdoor kennels. So we have to evacuate the dogs. Otherwise, the water comes up into their kennel. And so that's really the biggest issue right now. But building a shelter is super expensive. We are fundraising around $3 million right now to break ground. So we have the land, it's purchased, but we have to fundraise the rest of that money to start. So hopefully within the next 2 years, we'll be breaking ground. So that's really what our focus is on right now, because obviously it's just not ideal conditions and it's not conducive to the dogs and what we do, how the kennels are set up. You know, they can see each other and bark at each other. And right now there's cat cages right next to the dog cages, which, you know, it can be really stressful on the cats too. So the new space will be amazing and we can't wait for it. Jokingly, the board president said he's going to put in a big concrete loop so that Max can go and skate the dogs and we don't ever have to leave, because right now we'll take the dogs in a van and go to like an open area with a bunch of sidewalks because it's more conducive. There's no spot like that on the current campus.
How do you manage being so involved in both of these organizations, but also working full time, managing being at home during a quarantine? How are you handling all this?
Honestly, it's not overwhelming. I feel like not one more than the other takes up more of my time. You know, I work during the day. That was one of my biggest misconceptions about joining the board of Dorchester Paws as well. It's really not a huge commitment. We have board meetings every other month, and then Big Brothers Big Sisters is really what you make of it. So at the least amount, there's typically at least 2 outings with your little a month. During quarantine, we just adapted, and I honestly feel like I have more time because I'm not sitting in my car at all and everything is done virtually. So as far as Dorchester Paws, all of our meetings have been on WebEx or Zoom. We can operate as normal. It's just we feel so lucky that we live in this day and age where we can do it. You know, if this had happened years and years ago, it would have been tough to keep the shelter up and going, and I don't think people would continue to have the funds going in because people are struggling financially right now, and we understand that.
What would you tell people who may have zero volunteer experience at this point, but may have some time with COVID, or maybe they want to volunteer but think that they can't because of quarantine or other restrictions like that? How do they get started or find what they're passionate about, or get over a fear that maybe they're too shy or don't have the skills or don't have the time, all the qualifiers that you put in place that stop you from doing things?
Yeah. Honestly, you don't know what you don't know. And I didn't know that I would be so passionate about helping dogs or people in the community. And so it's just a matter of doing your research. I found out a lot about these organizations like via social media because I'm not from here. And just asking other people. So I just went to the shelter and they teach you everything that you need to know. There's a volunteer orientation and it goes through how to get the dog on a leash, how to get the dogs back into their kennel safely, like how to warm dogs up if they can interact with each other. Do they have to be kept separate? They walk you through everything. You don't have to have the funds to be a supporter, or you don't have to volunteer your time. Like even just sharing a Facebook post on your wall might get another person to volunteer, and it just kind of snowballs from there. So just being a voice or spreading the word or posting or sending a picture of a dog to a friend, you just never know.
Where do you think that you and Max and all of your dogs, we're currently 4, who knows where it'll be in 5 years?
I feel like we'll be doing much of the same thing. Max actually submitted paperwork for what he's doing to be considered a nonprofit. And the reason that he did that is because eventually he can just pick up dogs from the shelter on his own and adopt them out right out of his van. He wants to get like a big air-conditioned truck with built-in kennels. And if we're at a park and he's skating a dog and someone's interested, instead of saying, oh, here's the number, you can call the shelter and ask or go visit, he can adopt them out himself, which will be really great. And then we want to eventually have people sponsor different dogs, and then those donations will go back to the animal shelter. I just see Skatedogtor really blowing up. You know, we've had requests from shelters not even in our state, and obviously we would love to do that. We're now working with a few rescues here as well. And everything is free. Max doesn't take any money from anyone. So if you have a foster dog, you can just reach out to him and he'll set up a time and you just meet us with the dog and he'll skate him and make a video for you. So I just see him continuing to grow with that, and hopefully we just see adoption skyrocket. But what he wants to do is a cross-country trip eventually, once we have the funds to spend on this big dog van transporter thing. We want to try and hit shelters in every state, which would be really cool.
Oh my gosh, that does sound like such a cool idea.
Yep.
It's amazing listening to the lives of you two and figuring out how you are both so incredibly generous with your time and so innovative with your ideas. It's really impressive. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciated hearing about all of your experiences and your ideas and all the great ways you're changing your community. So thank you again.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks for watching.